Good morning. This is Crystal Woods with Seasons in the Vine, and it's Fresh Friday. And today I want to talk to you about deliverance. I want to talk to you about God delivering you from whatever it is in your life, whatever it looks like, and leading you into another place. But the mistakes that can happen along the way if we are not obedient to how He is desiring to deliver us. So we're going to look at the story of Lot and his wife coming out of Sodom and Gomorrah and her turning into a pillar of salt. Kind of a crazy story, but the applications are ridiculously good. So we're going to be in Genesis 19. I'm not going to go through the whole story. You should just read the whole chapter. It wouldn't even take you that long. But I want to really just focus again on our application piece so that your faith is refreshed and you're rejuvenated and you are seeking the Lord for whatever it is that He desires to do in your life, specifically in the way of deliverance. And I don't necessarily mean like demonic deliverance. I guess it could be. I'm really talking more about Him calling you out of Egypt, out of a place of bondage, out of a place that He just doesn't want you there. Okay, so we pick up here with, there's this warning, Sodom and Gomorrah are going to be destroyed. It's time to get Lot out. We have to get him out, but he's a little bit hesitant. So let's pick up on Genesis 19:15. As morning dawned, the angels urged Lot, saying, "Up, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, lest you be swept away in the punishment of the city." But he lingered. So the men seized him and his wife and his 2 daughters by the hand, the Lord being merciful to him. And they brought him out and set him outside the city. Here we just see the mercy of God. They're not even that willing to leave the city that's about to be destroyed, yet God is having mercy and literally bodily picking them up and moving them out of the city because they're just not moving of their own accord. Wow, has anybody ever been there before where like God warned you, He is trying to help you, but you just won't move. Like you just aren't getting it. I know I've been there before and been warned by the Lord to get out of certain situations, leave a certain position, leave a certain place. This is not for you right now. And staying in the wrong place is not great because then you end up getting into things you shouldn't be into because you shouldn't even be there in the first place. And the Lord so much was trying to move me out of those things, and yet I was being resistant and stubborn. And that's pride, like a way of us thinking we can handle it or we know best. They don't want to leave the city. They don't even want to go that far away, as we're going to see. So let's pick up in 17. And as they brought them out, one said, "Escape for your life. Do not look back or stop anywhere in the valley. Escape to the hills, lest you be swept away." So there's this warning. Don't look back, run to the hills. And Lot said to them, "Oh no, my lords, behold, your servant has found favor in your sight, and you have shown me great kindness in saving my life. But I can't escape to the hills, lest the disaster overtake me and die." And so he is fighting with these beings that actually know best and they know how it should go. So we just see this overall resistance. And in a way, Lot and his wife are very well matched because now she really pays the ultimate price because she looks back. But you can see even with his leadership, it's very delayed and he's not really being prompt in listening to how God is determining to deliver him. "Behold, this city is near enough to flee to, and it is a little one. Let me escape there. Is it not a little one? And my life will be saved." And so he's slowing down the process, deciding to go to a different place. And he said to him, "Behold, I grant you this favor." So the angels that are escorting them out give them this, that I will not overthrow the city which you have spoken. And so they go to this smaller city, which like I said, you need to just kind of get into the text and dive into it. But for our purposes, we're talking specifically about when God is calling us out of a place and we're not heeding what He is saying. "There quickly, for I can do nothing until you arrive there." Therefore, the name of the city was called Zor. Now, verse 23, the sun had risen on the earth when Lot came to Zoar. So now they're safely far enough away. Then the Lord rained on Sodom and Gomorrah sulfur and fire from the Lord of heaven. And he overthrew those cities and all the valley and all the inhabitants of the city and what grew on the ground. Okay, this is going to be really interesting. But Lot's wife behind him looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. Okay, so we're going to stop right there because this is exactly where we're going to land for this Fresh Friday. So she became a pillar of salt. So I'm going to give you an option on what that might mean. Like, because my question was, why a pillar of salt? Why? Like, why not something else? Why was it salt? Well, nobody knows for sure. I checked the sources. Some people have some suggestions. Salt has lots of meaning in the Bible. Preservative, flavorful, its usefulness. There's a lot of understanding with salt, but in this particular case, and in the case in Jeremiah 17, where the shrub that's in the desert, that's not the tree planted by the water that sends its roots out, that shrub is in a salt land, okay? And so I remember studying that to teach for it, and the salt land for us doesn't make a lot of sense, but for this people group, they would understand that because there was a salt land really close by. And salt made land, as far as like the agricultural validity of the land or fertility of the land, that's probably a better word. The salt made it impossible for anything to grow in the soil. And now you might starting to get some application pieces, okay, on where I'm headed with this Fresh Friday. No one knows for sure, but salt did make land useless. And now Sodom and Gomorrah, as we see, he overthrew those cities and all the valley and all the inhabitants of the city and what grew on the ground. This is a total destruction scenario. Everything is destroyed. Everything that's growing, there is fire and sulfur and all kinds of things happening. And so this land is completely destroyed, similar to the fertility of a land that was full of salt. And so there's not anything going to be able to grow here because it was really bad land. And so Sodom and Gomorrah was filled with sin and rebelliousness and just really heinous morality, right? And so God is demonstrating his justice in his wrath on these cities. Now, Lot is not grateful. His wife doesn't seem grateful to be actually rescued. So there's a part of them deeply compromised in staying in that city. Like they wanted to, and yuck. But we say that, but how often does God try to sanctify us and call us into more holiness as we grow? And we're like, oh, but I like that show, or oh, but I like how I do this, or oh, I like how I overindulge in this, or this is my guilty pleasure. All of those things are forms of being like Lot and his wife, where God is saying, I have more for you in a different way, and I want you to come this way, but you're still holding on to what you think is best or what you prefer. So particularly the salt idea is like, this is my application piece to it. Nobody knows for sure why it was salt, but what we do know is salt ruined the land, and this land is already ruined and has been destroyed. So nothing good could grow there. And if she becomes a pillar of salt, literally, that's crazy. But Lot's wife behind him looked back and became a pillar of salt, like became it. So what that is it's just no good. There's nothing good there. There's nothing God can work with. It's just useless. Like Jesus talks about salt that loses its saltiness. Like what point is it then? There is no point at all. And so she becomes this pillar of salt, and salt ruined the land, and it exhibited this pervasiveness into where no agriculture could grow. And if there's no agriculture, then there's no people. And so an entire land for up to 100 years would have to be vacated, and no one could live there. And so when they hear about salt land, or they're thinking about salt, very specifically, they're thinking about places they know where the salinity in the soil became so great that nothing could grow there. And so what I would propose is that when we resist God's deliverance and his freedom that he wants to give us, we are in ourselves being a salty land, not in a good way, but in a bad way, where there's nothing good that can grow because we're not heeding what he is trying to do. She's looking back at what she apparently loved or she desired to stay in. And God is saying, no, like you need to come this way. I'm trying to save you. And because she did that, and that was a direct disobedience, then we have this really horrific consequence of her becoming a pillar of salt. But we don't want that to be us either. We want to be the good kind of salty, not the bad kind of salty. And so we need to be mindful of how God is convicting us, how God is calling us into greater and greater freedom, and not hold fast to the Sodom and Gomorrahs in our own life, our own guilty pleasures. I mean, that's just such a phrase that always makes me sick when I hear it, because it's like, ooh, but Jesus probably died for that guilty pleasure. And so I don't want to be like Lot's wife and looking back longingly on what was, what I dabbled in, and what I decided to enjoy as a guilty pleasure, when God is wanting to set me free from that. And so it's a sharp word, but we want to be good ground. And salty ground is not good ground. So we want to be good ground so things can actually grow. Nothing could be done with her. I mean, she was as useless as a pile of salt. And Sodom and Gomorrah, the same. Like nothing could be done there. Nobody's repenting. Nobody desires to. They were so evil. Back up a chapter or two, and you're going to see some pretty disgusting morality in Acts. And so they didn't want it. So there's nothing that can happen there because there's no willingness to let it happen there. And so because she longed for what God didn't want for anymore, and she rejected the deliverance of God, there was really nothing good left. There was nothing there to work with. So it's like a pillar of salt. So Lot's wife, final sentence, turning into a pillar of salt. The problem was the looking back and rejecting of God's deliverance. Stop looking to Egypt. Stop looking to Sodom and Gomorrah. Stop looking in the past at what God is trying to set you free from, because in doing so, we're like Lot's wife, and we're looking back, and God is like, I died to set you free from that. Like, I want to deliver you from this. Why are you holding on to it? Just a fun little word today. Have fun with it, and I will see you next week.